I remember being at this Italian place called Vittorio's downtown. It was one of those spots with the red and white checkered tablecloths that always feel a little greasy under your elbows, and the air smelled like burnt garlic and overpriced wine. I was sitting across from a girl named Chloe. I'd spent 45 minutes in front of the mirror, picked out a fresh, charcoal overshirt, and I'd even detailed the interior of my F-150, just in case she saw it. About 15 minutes in, I realized my palms were damp. I wasn't having a conversation. I was working a shift. I was leaning so far across the table, I'm surprised I didn't faceplant into her minestrone. I was laughing at her jokes before she even hit the punchline, and I was constantly scanning her face, watching her eyes, her mouth, her posture, just to see if I was winning. I remember the waiter came by to refill the water. His name was Brian, I still remember the crooked name tag, and I caught my reflection in the dark window behind him. I looked desperate. I looked like a guy who was trying to sell a vacuum cleaner to someone who didn't even have carpets. Chloe didn't feel attraction. She felt pity. I ended up dropping $120 on a dinner where she'd checked out before the breadsticks even hit the table. Most of you guys think you lose a woman during the big moments, the deep talk or the end-of-the-night move. You don't. You lose her in the first date trap. It's a series of subtle, thirsty moves you make because you think you have to earn the right to be there. Today, we're breaking down the 3 specific traps that turn a maybe into a no before the appetizers even show up. If you've ever walked away from a date feeling like you did everything right, but she still sent that no spark text the next morning, hit the like button. You didn't do everything right. You did way too much. And if you want to stop being the guy who pays for the maybe and start being the guy who stays steady, subscribe to the channel. I'm looking at the comments. What's the most awkward thing you've ever said just to fill a silence on a date? Let's get into it. 1. The audition framework. I spent my entire 20s stuck in what I call the audition framework. You walk into the date thinking you're the contestant and she's the judge. You feel this weight in your chest that tells you if you don't perform, you're going to get buzzed off the stage. I remember being on a date with a girl named Sarah at this rooftop bar. I spent 20 minutes explaining my 5-year plan for my business. I talked about the overhead, the scaling, the new warehouse space I was looking at. I thought I looked like a high-value, ambitious man. The reality? I was boring her to death. I was listing my accomplishments like I was reading a resume because I didn't believe I was enough just sitting there in silence. In psychology, this is overinvestment. You're putting in 90% of the energy to keep the vibe alive, and that tells her one thing: you think she's out of your league. A woman wants to discover who you are, not be sold on a brochure of who you want to be. When you audition, you're signaling that you're the secondary character in the room. It's exhausting for her. It's like watching a street performer. She might throw you a like or a smile, but she doesn't want to go home with the guy who's juggling for her attention. Looking back at that night with Sarah, I should have just shut up. I should have let the silence sit there until it got weird and then stayed steady anyway. If you're afraid of the silence, you're afraid of her. And she can feel that through the table. 2. The approval pivot. This is the one that still makes me cringe when I think about it. I call it the approval pivot, but it's really just social mimicry. It's when you abandon your own opinions the second you think they might make her uncomfortable. Back at Vittorio's, Chloe told me she hated hustle culture. She said people who worked weekends were just corporate slaves who didn't know how to live. Now keep in mind, I had literally just spent 10 minutes bragging about my side hustle flipping furniture. Instead of standing my ground, I watched myself, in real time, backtrack like a coward. I said, "Yeah, honestly, I'm starting to realize life is about balance. I'm actually thinking about shutting that whole project down." I saw her eyes go cold. She didn't like the balanced version of me. She hated the fact that I just deleted my own reality to fit into hers. This is low social status signaling. The second you pivot your opinion to match hers, you've told her that you don't have a center. You've told her that your spine is made of wet cardboard. I thought I was being agreeable. I thought I was showing her how much we had in common. I wasn't. I was showing her that I was a chameleon, who didn't have the balls to disagree with a girl he just met. A woman can't respect a man she can move that easily. If she can move your opinions on a Tuesday, she knows she can move your boundaries on a Saturday. You don't have to be a jerk, but you have to be a man who has weight. If you like the beer she hates, drink it. If you like the job she thinks is too much, own it. She'd rather be with a man she disagrees with than a man who has no self. 3. The investigative interview. This is the fastest way to kill the mood. I see guys do it at every bar, every coffee shop, every dinner. You're nervous, so you fall back on the standard questions. Where are you from? How many siblings? What's your degree in? It's logic-based conversation, and it's the death of attraction. You're talking to her brain, not her heart. You're treating the date like a deposition. I remember being on a date where I asked so many questions, I felt like I was wearing a wire and working for the FBI. I was so focused on getting the data that I forgot to actually be in the room. The investigative interview happens because you're scared of the emotional unknown. You want to stay in the safe zone of facts. But facts are boring. Facts don't make her feel anything. I remember one night I just stopped. We were at this outdoor cafe, and instead of asking about her job, I just said, "The smell of the rain on this pavement reminds me of being a kid in the garage with my dad. Just handed him wrenches." No question at the end, just a raw memory. She actually leaned in. She stopped looking at her phone. She started talking about her own grandmother's garden. The interview was over, and the connection started. If you're just checking boxes on a list, you're just a guy she met for dinner. If you're sharing a vibe, you're a man she actually wants to see again. 4. The protective over-politeness. I used to think being a gentleman meant I had to be practically invisible. I'd ask, "Is this okay?" Or, "Do you want to go here?" every 5 minutes. I thought I was being respectful. I was actually being non-assertive, and it's a massive turnoff. I remember taking a girl to this taco spot that was way too loud. Instead of just saying, "This place is too loud, let's go somewhere else," I kept asking her if she was okay. "Is it too loud? Do you want to move? I'm so sorry if this is annoying." I was apologizing for the air. She eventually just said, "It's fine, Mark," but she looked exhausted. She didn't want a guy who apologized for the environment. She wanted a guy who handled the environment. She's looking to see if you can lead a simple Tuesday night. If you can't decide where to sit or when to leave without asking for permission, she knows you're going to struggle when the real stuff hits. 5. The good guy disclaimer. I'm not like other guys. Or the classic, "I really value honesty and communication." I used to say this because I wanted her to know I was one of the good ones. It's self-proclamation, and it always has the opposite effect. If you have to tell her you're a good guy, it's usually because your actions aren't doing the talking. I remember saying to a girl, "I'm the kind of guy who's always up front." 2 weeks later, I was the one ghosting her because I didn't know how to handle a difficult conversation. I was lying to her and myself. She sees the disclaimer as a red flag. It's a sign that you're overcompensating for a lack of real substance. Let her decide what kind of guy you are. Don't give her the brochure. Look, the reason we fall into these traps, the reason we audition and pivot and interview, is because we think the date is a test we have to pass. We think there's a correct answer for every question and a winning move for every moment. But the date isn't a test. It's a vibe check. She's checking to see if your internal world is solid. When you do these things, you're telling her that your internal world is empty. You're telling her that you're looking to her to fill it up. You're basically a man with no home looking for a place to stay. And she doesn't want to be your landlord. Attraction is about two solid objects coming together. If you're a cloud, constantly changing shape to fit her, she can't grab onto you. There's nothing to lean against. I spent years being the cloud. I thought if I was soft enough and agreeable enough, I'd be safe. I was safe, all right. I was so safe, I was invisible. The moment I started being the anchor, the moment I was okay with her disagreeing with me, or the silence being awkward, or the date even failing, that's when everything changed. Because a man who is okay with the date failing is a man who isn't desperate. And non-desperation is the most attractive thing you can carry into a room. The first date trap is just a series of ways you try to hide your own anxiety. You think the steak, the flowers, or the clever stories are going to save you. They won't. The only thing that saves you is your ability to stay in your own skin. To sit across from a beautiful woman and not feel like you're in a court of law. It's the difference between being a guy who's trying to get something and a man who is already whole. Next video, we're going to look at the texting death spiral. The 3 specific texts you're sending after the date that are killing the momentum and making her delete your number. It's the stuff you think is charming, but it's actually just a nail in the coffin. Stay steady. Stay grounded. I'm Mark, and this is Mark on Dating.